Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast and YouTube channel. I'm on a mission to help you cut the tie to all the things that are holding you back so you can unleash your entrepreneur. Hey, welcome back to Never Been Promoted. I am Thomas Helfrich. I am your host today. Thanks for joining here. We're on a mission to help entrepreneurs cut that tie to all the things that kind of hold you back, learn about how to become an entrepreneur, unleash that entrepreneur within you. The title Never Been Promoted, if you don't know, comes from the fact that I've never been promoted. But that's because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, I think. Today, we're going to have a great conversation with Julian Hayes II. He is he's really, you're going to love this. We're going to talk about, he's the founder of Executive Health, and he has this idea of managing your health like you would your wealth. And if for those of you who are healthy, you got a million dreams, and that's how it works. But when you get unhealthy or you have a health scare, you only have but one dream when that happens. And so I think sometimes, understanding that and the idea of how that affects your life or your business or whatever else you're trying to do is super important. And it's one of those things that do hold you back if you're not focusing on the right things. I know I've let my stuff go at times and taken some journey. So before I bring Julian on here, listen, this is the first time here or first time listening or watching. Thanks. And I hope it's the first of many. And if you've been here before, I really appreciate you coming back. Our only call to action is, go to YouTube, give us a follow or, to subscribe there. And if you'd like to get on the show or you'd like to, give you some feedback on the show, just connect me on LinkedIn here at Thomas Helfrich. And listen, if you're on the podcast, it's so important for the community and the guest. If you can give us, a great rating. If you don't like the podcast, like I said, hit me on LinkedIn and tell me why and see what we can do to improve it. But let's bring on Julian. Enough shameless promotions. Julian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing super fantastic, man. I love the intro and everything, and I love just the whole idea of how you just clip the tie in the middle. So it's very cool.
I will tell you, this tie is super short, and I got to tie it every time because I can't get it off with my fat head. But I appreciate that. People, by the way, like a metaphor of cutting the tie. It's actually a little more difficult than you think to do. I don't say if you ever try to cut a tie, it doesn't go as well as you thought, and I think that was it was a good metaphor for the.
Absolutely.
Before we dive into your world, because it's a cool backstory that we're going to get into here, I want to ask you an icebreaker question. I don't know if it's an icebreaker, but maybe a warm up. Okay. Let's do something fun here. If you were a ghost, who would you haunt?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. If I was a ghost, who would I haunt? Oh man. The easy answer is some of my enemies, but I'm gonna take a left turn and I'm gonna haunt people who let other people stop from going after their dreams.
Oh, I like that. That lines up to our brand a little too. The good stuff there. I like that. Anybody and you have in mind, you want to name somebody like a bully from like high school or something like that? You're like, I'm haunting that mother. Like,
no, I couldn't really haunt a bully. I was never really bullied because I think I was too good of a
talker. Oh, you were the
talker.
bully. You were the bully.
No, I wasn't a bully. Yeah, no, I never really had problems with bullying or anything. I think my, how presidents have approval ratings and everything. I always thought my approval rating was always pretty good. I'm very good across the aisles. I like to think at one point I could have been very good in politics or something, but probably really not.
You would have hated it. It would have killed you. I've met you offline enough times to know that you're too nice for that. You're way too nice.
Yeah, I'm probably the person who actually gets ruined by politics and becomes dark. Yeah.
You become Lord Vader. Because you start off Luke Skywalker. See, I got to bring the nerdy stuff in too much. All right, you want to jump into a little. Just give me a few like the pitch on Executive Health, and then back up wherever it's appropriate to kind of how you got there.
Yeah, so the pitch on Executive Health is I'm really into athletics, and athletics they have a performance team, and I think business teams. I think business leaders should have a performance team as well in different aspects of their health. So that's in a nutshell what we do. We combine longevity, business, and health and fitness, and all those things. So there's fitness people, there's longevity people, there's people like myself who are kind of the CEO of your health, and it's a hodgepodge of a lot of things that I think is very unique to the marketplace right now and is a little ahead of its time. And some of the backstory about me is let's start in medical school. So I went to medical school and I stayed for a year in New York City. I'm from Tennessee. So when you go to New York from Tennessee, it is quite the culture shock to say the least. So up there, I'm just another person. In Tennessee, you are pretty weird for a lot of my habits and everything. But during that time in New York, I went out a lot. That was probably my college experience, since I didn't have an actual college experience in undergrad, because I always say I'm a late bloomer. And so up there, I meet a lot of different interesting people. And the biggest lesson, to keep it short, was I was in the Lower East Side, and I was talking to a lady. We had some cafeterias, and she was describing her job, and she was describing it in a way that fit perfectly, ideally, with what she wanted to do in her life. And so that a light bulb went off in my head, and I couldn't unsee it. Once the veil is removed, you can't go back. And so for me, it stuck out as like, why don't you create your own job or create something? You can find this thing that you really like, that you're skilled at, but is it really fitting with your lifestyle? So I always wanted to find a way to do that, and that's a quest that we're always going to keep working on. But in that moment, I knew that I'm not going to stay in school, probably. So my proverbial cut the tie moment, because much like you, I've never been promoted. I've been a student my whole life, and then had a bunch of different side jobs.
Yeah. When you did that, you want to talk about the family pressures on that one and that decisioning?
Yeah, I was really excited to come back that summer. So I did good semester, had a good GPA and everything. So it was always good. And then I just decided not to do it. And I was like, I think I found my passion. I'm stoked. I'm excited. I haven't had this much excitement, because I'm normally a guy who runs on neutral. And I remember telling everyone that I don't think I'm going back. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. It's going to be something in health and fitness still. And they're like, "Are you crazy? What do you mean you're not going back? Do you need to get drug tested? What happened in New York?" All these things. So 0. So my approval rating, talking about that in that moment, it tanked, absolutely tanked, and
So
probably
people were
hasn't.
confused buyers at that point. They're like, I'm not sure about this guy now. I mean,
Yeah,
something
probably hasn't.
happened.
Still hasn't risen with a lot of people, and but I
Wait,
understand.
anybody in particular? I mean, because let's
Oh,
like who
it's just different family, just different family. But I understand why, because you have to understand, when you say you're going to create something that's not in existence right now, it just exists in your head. And most people really need to see something in order to believe it. I understand it. That sounds scary. Why are you going to leave something that's the proven commodity, right? If you do A, B, and C, take your test, pass your boards, you're going to have something down the line. You're going to have this quote unquote security. You're going to have this income, this job. And now you're doing something where there's nothing right now, absolutely 0. So it looks like to them you're moving backwards, when really you're thinking long term. So in this moment, maybe you are moving backwards, but I'm thinking 15, 20, 25 years down the line. That's my
well,
whole thing.
maybe it's not backwards. Maybe the perception is you're moving backwards is they see things moving forwards, like how it was supposed to. And you
Mhm,
said, no, I'm gonna go to this side road and it's not backward. I look at it as it's your why go somewhere and this happens to lots of people. Like
mhm,
even myself, I remember. I mean, I call it the calling, and you have this calling that you didn't ignore. I don't know if was that the first time you had it, or have you had that kind of and the idea of the calling being there's something drawing you away from what your
mhm.
intended path was supposed to be or what your norm. Was that the first time you'd had it, or was that the time you found you bought into it?
No, it gets louder. I've heard it. I've heard it for years. And you've read Joseph Campbell books, I'm assuming, right? Have you
I
read?
actually have not. So
Oh,
now
okay.
sure.
So
I gotta
because
get out there.
you mentioned Star Wars, right? And George Lucas is a huge fan of Joseph Campbell's books. That's kind of how the arc of Luke Skywalker and all that came from those books. And so there's a calling that we all have a lot of times, and there's a hero's journey. And so for me, I heard this in college a lot of times, but there was always a fear of stepping out. I knew what I was doing wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it was easy. I was good at it. You got a lot of approval. You got a lot of praise from people. So it's that gets kind of get addicting. That feels good
Mhm.
to get praise and from everyone. And but no, it wasn't the first time. It just I feel like it gets louder, and there's moments it just keeps screaming. It gets louder, it gets louder, it gets louder. There's the moments that it calls you, the events gets bigger and bigger and gets more grandiose, right? At first, it starts as a whisper, and then it gets as a yell, and then just a megaphone at that moment was for me.
Well, it does, and so I see it like my youngest. She's like, "Daddy, I'm going to be a business owner, I'm going to be an entrepreneur." I'm like, "Oh, what are you going to sell?" Or she's like, "I don't know yet." And that's when I don't I'm up at night thinking about it. I go, "Oh my god, my poor girl, 10 years old, 9 years old." I'm like, "Jeez, no, that's not going to go away, honey." So, um,
Mhm.
but what I don't want that to do is die.
Yeah.
I want her to take a path to understand it, and I know my calling. Really, I remember the moment. I remember it was like sitting on a beach. So it's right after college. It's right, to put in the time frame. It's 99, summer of 99. It just gone through PricewaterhouseCoopers. I won the internship, through good grades and the year before. And now you're there doing your training for 3 months and you're about to go out and do projects, right? And I'm sitting there at the end party on a beach because everyone's there. And I'm kind of just like down. And the one guy I was working with came. I was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Is this it? Like, this is what we're like now we're in the world." And I'm like, he's like, "Well," he was kind of like, would you expect it to be something bigger?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Whatever," kind of scoffed it off. And I was like, I'm sure he took it as arrogant, but I'm like, but you go down the path anyway. And it just kind of, and the next thing you got student loan debt, and you got this, and you're making money, and you're like, and so it found me later, but I remember that calling of, I really would rather figure out something for myself. I go, I think I'd be happier. And I didn't revisit it until 40 something, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Almost every entrepreneur I have finds that moment. And what I think, and what you had, or at least what I'm hearing, and I'd love you to, it's the second phase of that, which is purpose,
Mhm.
because that's the thing that drives the resiliency that's going to be needed to take the step out, deal with family judging, deal with all the things you're going to have to go deal with to go do that. Talk about your because when I did it, my purpose was more around, I want a better example for kids. I want a better
Mhm.
lifestyle for myself. I want to be able to help more people than just whatever client's paying us. For
Mhm.
you, talk about how that purpose, because you knew it was coming. You knew family pressures were coming, friend pressures, and potential embarrassment.
Mhm.
You ran neutral, you did everything right, and all of a sudden you're not. Now they're like, what? What was the driver for you?
Yeah, I mean, I love creation. I love just creating, and I want. I'm so fascinated by just everything being the historic and just being able to create something and have it live on for a long time. And also, I think about death and mortality a lot. And to some people, it scares them, but to me, it's a known thing. And I think that's because I had a lot of sick individuals around me growing up. My father was sick and dealing with dialysis over the course of time, and so you get to have these things in there. And one thing I didn't want was the poison pill of regret. I never wanted to be those people who they're 65, 70, 75, and they're talking about, well, I wish I would have did this. I wish I would have did that. And so I never wanted that. And then I also thought that what does it mean to live life? What is, what if I get to the end, what's a good life to me? And I rather get to the end of my time, whenever that is, and I can at least look back and say I gave it my all. I went after what I really wanted. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But I didn't want to get back at that time and say, I should have did this. I wish I did that. But I let those pressures get to me. And so for me, also a little bit like you, I don't have the kids yet, but I do think about that is setting an example and thinking this is the standard that our family created. Around my whole community, I'm first generation going to school. Um,
Oh,
and then
then you
also,
left. Oh my God, that pressure's even.
well, I like that. I think it's kind of cool I think to a certain extent, I think pressure is a privilege to have. And that's kind of how I reframe that. It's a privilege. It's awesome to have to say that, you know, if these things pan out for me, think about how many other people are going to be affected by and that is so cool. And so so for me, it's a combination of creation. It's a combination of the potential historic, and the legacy part of um down the line I can be that guy on the picture that inspired other entrepreneurs or other people just to really go after what they really wanted down my family lineage, and even some of my friends and their kids and stuff like that.
And so, you said you always had an affinity for sports. Did you play it? Like, what's the tie back
Yeah, I
to?
played basketball. Yeah, basketball. And yeah, it was fun. I had opportunities to do the junior college, but I learned I'm 5'11", and I'm not going to be an NBA player. And so
No.
I quickly learned a long time ago that your brain is going to take you further than your athletics.
Yeah.
And so I had opportunities for both, and I think I made the right decision on that because I
Yeah, I
wasn't.
mean, but athletics, if you can play through high school, you
Mhm,
can draw upon it. If you somehow get to play through college, you can draw upon it in real life.
mhm.
You know, it's a great foundation. Not everyone has to do athletics to get there, though. To be clear, like what you don't want to is hold on to the dream. You just want to use it as a stepping stone.
Yeah, well,
Um,
there's good lessons in athletics in any sport, really, in terms of being able to, the typical be around people, leading others, enduring. There's a lot of different hardships. There's a lot of things that you don't want to do, but you need to do, and
that's
and
right.
so there is a lot of good lessons in that.
So talk about the founding of your company a little bit. So you launched it. You know, you decided it.
Mhm.
Take me through the early days of launching it's executivehealth.io.
Yeah,
I'm leaving it up there, but talk me through that. Talk me through like the struggles, the things you had to overcome.
yeah. Well, the first struggle, first and foremost, which I wasn't used to, was actually failing so hard, or just experiencing so much. It's much harder than I thought it was going to be. Up until that point, I haven't really had to face that much adversity and struggle and obstacles, even in sports, because I had a natural talent. And even with the academics, there's a little, but usually the more time I put into it, I know what I'm going to get. And so the whole entrepreneurship thing is so crazy and so many twists and turns. It's like a roller coaster of emotions. And so the executive health is actually a new iteration. This is from a few years ago. And that's one thing, is that if I can give listeners any heads up, oftentimes the first iteration, the first idea is not going to be the final thing. You're going to have so many different twists and turns, whether it's different product, whether there's different market fits, different customer segments that you're going after. So don't get too married with the idea. One of the best quotes that I still keep to this day is from Jeff Bezos, where he said, "We are," when he's talking about Amazon, he's like, "We're stubborn on the vision, but malleable on the details." And so that's one thing. So my vision is still crystal clear, but how I'm getting there and all those things is going to continually change. But to go back and really answer your question, I started off simply just personal training at a gym. That's just what I knew to do. It's just I'll go work.
You got to make
And
money. I mean, that's the other thing too,
yeah,
right?
but
You got to pay some bills. And I think it's a big people
yeah.
realize
Mhm.
sometimes you're gonna start wherever you start. You're not gonna end, and nor
Yeah.
should you. Actually, I don't think
No.
you should. Otherwise, you're probably miss something.
Yeah. And when I was there, I saw that what they're charging at the gym, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm only getting like a fraction of a percent of what they're
Right,
getting
just because they
for a
have a
client.
gym, I can go buy a set of
Yeah.
weights and people
And so other time, and then I start seeing people on doing online coaching and that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, I'll just leave. I know health, I know fitness stuff. That was a huge mistake. Huge mistake, because I knew the subject of health and fitness. I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about marketing, branding, how to find people, none of that. So, as you can expect, it was a little tough going out on my own. And it was fine though. And you just find other side jobs as funding. I
So
look at
what
this.
so you started another side hustle, you just did something else, but how
I,
did you
I,
bring it
I
back
always,
when
yeah, you just figure things out. Honestly, that's just always been my philosophy. So I look at it as that if I need to go find another side hustle, if I need to go get a job at a warehouse, or it's that's my funding. That's my VC money. That's why I look at it as. Whereas most people, sometimes in their business, they need to go get funding and everything. I just use these side things, and in my head, this is just my funding, and therefore I get to keep more equity of my company. And
it's your
that's
angel investor? That's how I
yeah,
looked at it.
yeah.
I
And
do
so
that with
that's
most W-2 jobs, to be fair. I'm with
mhm,
you on that one.
yeah,
I sign up for that.
yeah. And over time, you just keep learning. And one thing I did learn, and it was a dinner that I went to, and this was years after the first initial struggle. And I was listening to different people, and these were entrepreneurs, and they were talking about, well, I have a nutritionist here, but then I have a basic primary care doctor here, but they don't really do everything I want them to do. So I have another person and another person. And so I'm hearing in my head that there's like 5 or 6 different people. What if I just find a way to bring all these people and offer it all? So I was like, okay, I can do coaching. And then it also is part curation as well that I'm doing now. And that sounded exciting to me. And you just go do it, and you find ways to make partnerships, and you create it, and then you just go out and see how it is. And that's in a nutshell what I did.
And talk about your first client. How'd you land it?
Yeah. Let's see. How did I land my first client? How did I see? I always forget these things. I believe it was SEO. Yeah, it was SEO. And some reason I don't have a super competitive keyword, so they just found me on Google and through my writing. So one thing that did help is, so I write for a lot of the large publications. It's like Inc., Entrepreneur, and Forbes have columns there. And apparently that gives you a lot of SEO boost or key rankings, whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that helped my website, because now you have these things called backlinks. And so there's certain words that you'll just rank for easier than others because you have those. And so you're perceived as a domain authority. And so people are just searching for like weight loss for entrepreneurs or executive health coaching, and boom, there you are.
Exactly. So, writing for Entrepreneur or Forbes. And I think a lot of people don't know is you can pay a fee to get on those platforms as a contributor. And it's a great marketing tool. Like, Forbes is, sometimes you might be invited in. We've always, whenever I've worked for companies, you just pay the fee and you write and you get a column and stuff.
Yeah. No, I have always just pitched. Yeah. So I've always just been blessed to pitch and work on the skill. So, but that there is some people that do that. There's different councils now, and it's a little different, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same. But there's a few different nuances from a paid contributor to one who pays for the councils and stuff.
That's correct. Yeah. So exactly. But the point with it for sure is, just because you don't get invited in or they don't accept your piece, you could pay a marketing fee and get a lot of, they won't publish your stuff if it's crap, just to be clear. You still have to be, knowledgeable in your subject, and you still have to, be good. But it is a very good marketing strategy to do that kind of stuff. And I think that's great. Now, which of the publications you're doing, was it intentional from the SEO, or was it just something you were doing because you felt like that was the right thing to go do next?
I enjoy writing. So one of the reasons I wanted to leave was to write. I enjoy I love to write. And so I didn't know anything really about SEO, none of that stuff. I just wanted to write as well. And kind of going back to the girl at the place in the Lower East Side, there's different jobs or tasks I wanted to do. And if I choose to be a physician, that's going to take up predominantly all my time. Whereas I like coaching and advising, but I also wanted to do these other things. My mind goes so many different places. But long as I could have all these things fit within its ecosystem for one clear purpose, then it's going to be fine. But the writing thing was, I purely wanted to write. I almost decided to be a full-time writer and kind of leave that, but still write about my subject and everything. But I just really enjoy doing that. So it's, I have a lot of interest.
Yeah, well, and that's it. So let's talk about the entrepreneurial AD that lays in most of us who are entrepreneurs. How do you manage yours from that? Like, how do you stay focused so you're effective versus next shiny object? Because that's a big challenge for lots of people. Is like, oh, I do this, they fall, and then they go do it. So what's your method for madness management?
Yeah, I have a lot of I put myself under a lot of constraints. But one thing that helps me now, that probably a year or two into this, is that I listen to a lot of biographies and autobiographies. And one thing that you'll notice is that usually a lot of times the entrepreneur is going to be in one specific industry. That's the industry that they're in for the long haul. And they might have other side ventures, but they have this main thing. And also, so they have this one thing and this one skill set, and then it can start branching off into other different ventures. And so that's kind of how I think about this right now. And so for me, everything usually ties back into the realm of health and performance. But how do you do those things? It can be a little different. I can speak about it with a podcast. I can also write about it. And then I can also go out and train on it in like a company or so. But it's all still in that vertical of health and fitness. And, and then there's also a someday list that I have. Okay, so if I get to this stage, then let's start getting into this area of interest just because I'm curious about it. And so that's called I have a future learning curriculum. So I have things that I learn every day
Yep.
where I'm usually reading something in health. I'm usually reading something in business or some type of biography every day. But then there's just random future learnings that I want to get more into just out of curiosity that maybe at some point it will work into your business or something. So for me, I would tell you, I've read different things on different books on hospitalities. I'm reading the book now on the Four Seasons owner, and I love those industries. And you can bring bits and pieces of that stuff into your current business and company, and that helps you be more unique compared to everyone else because you're feeding your mind from different sources than compared to what everybody else in your industry is.
Yeah. I think what you described there is a really powerful tool. And I mean that because what it does is it allows you your brain to feel like you haven't lost an idea. So when you if you're like anybody else, I think it's kind of out there who, who knows this feeling. You capture an idea down on a notepad. What you
Mhm,
do is stop thinking about it in your kind of immediate mind with the idea that, hey, I'm going to come back to that. And it's really effective when you're like, you're trying to grow a business and you're like, hey, I think this would be a better service or better way to do that. Those you want to write down and go work on because they're part of your core thing. The next idea ones are the ones that distract you from the day.
mhm,
And I know I struggle with it. Lots of people do as well who are entrepreneurs, but writing it down, maybe your free time is reading about that. Fine. I'd even argue that you probably still should stay focused to what you're doing.
mhm.
But if you can't, that's a great way to focus and mentor yourself through limits. Say, listen, I wrote it down. I'm going to look at that later. And if it somehow springs, sometimes things spring back up, right? Like you meet somebody who goes, oh, I wish there was a service to this. You're like, I wrote that down. I know I did.
Yeah, and
Then,
you can almost even use it as a reward or something. So for me, if sometimes I'll do some stretching and mobility work, and I'll have a random YouTube lecture on something that's just not related to um, my core competencies, but it's something I'm interested in. And if anything, it's a way to relax and unwind while still feeding your brain with something.
yeah, I go. Um, Talk about how you market your business a little bit. So, we really focus a lot. There's a lot of things, stories we have, but I think
Mhm,
one of the hardest parts of any entrepreneurial journey is the marketing piece.
mhm,
Uh, Typically, if your marketing is pretty good, selling, people buy. Like you
mhm.
don't even have to sell at that point. It's so talk about what you're doing, struggles you faced with that, and how you've maybe overcome, or what ones you're still working on or still out there.
Yeah, probably like most entrepreneurs, I think the struggles is there's so many different tools to use. You hear some people saying it's about the funnels. Some people there's people that I'm sure you're on LinkedIn that DM you 100 times. That you get 100 different DMs about join my strategy call, download my ebook, all these different things. So, case in point, there's 100,000 different ways, not actually, but you get the point of ways that you can market your business and everything. And I think for me, you have to find one is a sweet spot of what do you enjoy doing? What can you see yourself getting better at? And what do you have a natural skill set and affinity for? And then go with that and then actually give it time. And then also what type of business do you have as well? So if you're selling maybe like a $10 widget or maybe a lower price thing, you are going to go for scale and people might buy more impulse buys. So your marketing is probably going to be different. Whereas for me, it's much more of a relational business and it's far from an impulse buy. So it's probably going to be an even longer buying cycle. So so for me, it's establishing, I guess people call it thought leadership. So for me, it's I do a lot of writing, I do a lot of content creation, whether that's through I do a lot of video with the podcast, and then also I write the articles, and then also I just generally meet people, and so I'll be top
Yeah,
of mind. So when it's time, it's time that they think about their health, because a lot of times, much like a lot of times finances or even with your health, it's not, or even insurance. Insurance is a big one. It's not like, oh man, I can't wait to get this life insurance. Something snaps into you to where you think about, oh, I should get this. This is a useful
probably
thing.
get that. Yeah, not that
Yeah,
I'll ever benefit from it unless it's
yeah,
fraud. Um,
yeah.
uh,
So it's usually one of those things. So for me, I enjoy writing, I enjoy creating, and I enjoy more people that are going to come to me. So maybe I'm a little more patient, and maybe that is sacrificing a little bit of growth, but it feels in congruence with myself. It feels in congruence with the long term brand that I'm aiming to create. So also what I'm keeping in mind as well, is that
Yeah,
I don't want a
absolutely.
brand that's just where I'm messaging 100 people a day on LinkedIn. I connect with people every day, but it's never anything about selling. It's just like, hey, it's great to connect. I'm curious about people.
Mhm.
That's the creative in me. And if you if I have a service that you'll need, great. And you just go by that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, it's I think it was Alex Hormozy who said this, but it was like something like most people can't be successful because they can't wait 12 months for success.
Mhm.
Like, right? They can't know the patience to do some version of that. And there is a patience piece. Uh, Talk about how you approach health then. So let's get into your
Mhm.
business just a little bit. So health, to manage it like an asset, idea, to build it, uh, you know, take me through that a bit and take the listener through it.
Yeah, well, you've heard me say this a lot, and it's first and foremost is thinking very long term. It's thinking about it's not the events today, but it's about the events 20, 30 years that you don't want to occur, or at least that you want to give yourself the best chance of mitigating them from happening. And so that's how I think about health. So the first thing I do with someone is, actually, let's backtrack. Think of yourself as a blank canvas. This is how I look at everyone. And there's a whole bunch of different assessments and labs if you're looking at the core features of how you're going to go about something. But I like to get more into the emotional side of things. So I like someone to go out and travel 30, 40 years from now. And I want them to think about what they're doing at that point or what they want to do. And if you love, let's say, snowboarding right now, what do you need to do at 85 to give yourself the chance that you're able to snowboard, to give yourself the chance that you are able to be a active participant in your grandkids' life, or even for some of us, great grandkids, and all those types of things.
Right.
And then we can backtrack. And then you can get into things like, okay, so let's set the blueprint from now that's going to help you get there. And then you start thinking about different financial terms like diversification. It's the same thing with like nutrition at times and sometimes with exercising. There's a diversification with the types of exercising that's beneficial for us. There's weight training, there's cardiovascular training, and then the exciting part, at least to me, is programming that and finding the right strategy that also integrates with this person's professional life and family life as well. Because there's three big pillars of impact that I think about. There's business, there's community, and then there's family. And when you take care of your health, all three of those areas exponentially improve.
Well, of course. And I think if I look at my own journey, like, right, I stopped drinking about a year ago, not because I was, needed. I made it wasn't like an alcoholic system. Right? It was more I'm sure I was on my path like everybody else. I
Mhm.
think I knew, but it was more of a conscious decision to say, I think I actually said the last 10 years of my life are going to be better if I stop drinking now at 47.
Mhm.
And one of those last 10 years, I mean, it might be now, it might be whenever it is, but and the truth is, I felt way better, lost weight. I mean, like there's other factors, but the point is, I took a conscious longer term effort of said, this doesn't really add value to me anymore, and it hasn't for some time. And you get over the fear of social situations. Where like, oh my, what am I going to do? You learn to drink club soda, you learn to just not care. And then after that while, people ask you about it, like, "Oh, how did you do?" How many people reach out to you privately and go,
Mhm.
"Oh, how did you do that?" Because I would and like, I read a book. That's like, that's what it was. I listened to a book,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, but the want was there. And my point being is, I started, I put investment, kind of, so to speak, into my
Mhm.
health after that because I'm like, all right, cool. Now I'm, like a lot of people, like you have a drink or two during the week, and then all of a sudden now, like the morning is a little duller, and you don't go work out, and you're a little more pissy at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're just not like all that kind of goes away. And
Yeah.
and that and like so now I'm like, kind of what else can I do? Right. So it's like, I get that mentality completely. Um
That's how it
because
starts. That's how it really starts, honestly, is it's just that it's a small deposit. Just like when you think about like savings. Remember when you used to laugh and say, if you save $1, just start with saving $1, save it whatever you got. And it's not even about the amount at that point. It's about you're building the habit, you're establishing the identity. So even with someone, because a lot of times people think, oh man, Julian, you're super advanced and all this stuff. Well, I was like, well, there's a point maybe 15, 20 years ago when it was just me eating a cup of broccoli for the first time because I didn't eat salads or none of that stuff. And it was just that one little habit. It was just me starting to actually lift weights that first
Right.
time. And then it just kept compounding and compounding. And it's the same way with our businesses. It's the same way with our wealth. And the interesting thing is the things that make people very successful, an entrepreneur very successful in their business, is oftentimes the very things that they need for their health. If they can just keep that in mind, you have to be very consistent. You have to delay gratification, have to be persistent, have to have a bit of resilience and mental fortitude. And it's the same thing with your health. It's the same exact concepts. The only difference is that a lot of times in business, you can just start more and more and more, and you're going to get more back. Whereas in health, it requires a little more balance. You can't just keep continually have your foot on the gas without hitting the brake some. But for all intents and purposes, the things that make people successful in the financial business world will be the same things that will make them successful with their health for the long run.
I'd even argue though, you do need to take your foot off the gas sometimes in business. And the
Mhm.
reason is because you got to slow down to see, hey, do we need to fine tune this? Should we go a slightly different direction? It's going well, we're going fast, but are we going fast and you're going to hit a wall and not realize it?
Mhm.
So I think you do need those breaks and as well. And you certainly do, because you'll miss out on other things like life and other stuff that you might be, you don't have to put it that hard. You get this, it's dissipating benefits by going 100% when 80 would get you within 4 or 5% of where you were. Like you don't have to,
That
I
is a
love
good
the
point.
habits
That is,
idea
yeah.
as well. James Clear stuff. So sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. I said that is a good point because one thing I'm curious about also when I'm reading through a lot of books, you also see that a lot of entrepreneurs, the thing that was sacrificed when going super fast to kind of build on your point, is a lot of times their families. The first relationship, a lot of them never got the first relationship right, and it took them 2 or 3 tries with the relationships to get right. And so it's been very curious. And so you bring up a good point. And something I've been thinking about lately is, if I go all out and I get there in 5 years, what's the cost of that compared to if I slow down a little bit, like you said, I'm still going to get the same result, and it took me 8 or 9 years, but I have all
Yep.
these other things intact.
I felt like that. I mean, we're about almost 4 years into my entrepreneurial journey,
Hmm.
and I have definitely felt like I cannot let my foot off the gas. I feel like there's too much pressure to make money, too much pressure to grow. I'm 48. I'm like, oh, I feel like, you feel like you're behind. You have,
Hmm.
and so I didn't work out. I haven't worked out for me forever, but I have now. I'm an entrepreneur. I should have all the free time in the world, right? Let's go golf. Never go. Don't. And I was, and this year I just said, you know what? I'm blocking out until 10 o'clock every morning because I found a spot where I can drop off kids. It's before, I don't look at an email. I certainly don't get near my computer or it's over. And when you do that, I haven't lost any momentum. And
Hmm.
you don't realize that like that 2 hours in the morning that you thought you didn't have, you absolutely have.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, and people are always shocked by this. I don't know why they think just because somebody's in the fitness or health industry that they're just like Superman or something, right? But I still have times where I have to remind myself or negotiate with myself to like, no, you're going to exercise because, like you said, there's so many things you want to do. There's so many things that you can see that you need to, and you're just like, oh man, if I go take this hour, I could send out some more emails or maybe get some more business or just 100 other things you can do, right? And so it hits us all still. And I wonder a lot of times, I don't know if I think it's just something that you just have to make a negotiation with yourself and say, this is just how it's going to be. Because I'm not sure that that's ever going to leave where you have this desire to keep your foot on the pedal. I think that's in essence what an
Well,
entrepreneur is.
what I found is it's just an excuse.
Hmm.
You determine your own success. It's an excuse. It's an excuse to focus on something else because you've gotten out of shape. Now, it's just an excuse. And like it or not, it is. And you find time for the things you want to do. And so I don't watch, I don't watch any TV. I
Hmm.
could not tell you what's going on really in the world. People are like, that's bad. I'm like, I don't know. I'm happier because of it. Ignorance is a bit of a bliss, except
It
for
is.
some of this election stuff that I'd like you cannot get away from. You're like,
Yeah.
wow, this is gonna be funny to watch. But I guess my advice I would say to people, and maybe you can challenge or agree or whatever else, but it either way, it's fine. It's acceptable here. Is you make time for what you want, but if you're watching Netflix at night, what you could be doing is also push-ups, sit-ups, or running up and down your stairs in your house or outside.
Hmm.
You could be doing something for your fitness at that point. You if you're in email too much, go download an AI tool and let it manage your inbox for you. And that'll save you 8-9 hours a week. There's your hour a day. The point is, if you really want to go do something, go do it. And you started working, you said you started lifting weights. Those first 6 weeks suck. Because you're embarrassed, you don't know what you're doing. You see these dudes and they're grabbing 4 times the weight of you, and you're like, I don't, my tens, and it hurts. But if you just keep going back in there, all of a sudden you're better. And now you're seeing the guy that's skinny starting, and you're like, anyway. So the point is, stop making excuses, find the time. And the first 6 weeks of my last part are going to suck, no matter what you're going to do. It's going to be exciting, but suck.
I would say though, the good thing about that is when you are a beginner is that, yes, it's a little uncomfortable, but the progress that you make, I remember the first probably about 12 to 18 months, the beginner gains that you get, because it's a new stimulus to your body. So you have a huge range to grow. It's super exciting because you're literally seeing progress by the week, especially if you're seeing progress by the week. Whereas now, man, just like a fraction of a gain, and I'm just like, yes, I'm doing it right. Yeah. And so that's a very exciting part. I almost think of it like, have you seen the little entrepreneur curve where at the very beginning of entrepreneurship, everyone's super excited and idealistic and like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Yep. And then they hit that dip, and then they try to go back
and that's
up.
usually when people quit and start something else.
Yeah. Yes. And that's kind of how it is with health and fitness as well. Is a lot of times, if you see this at the beginning of the year, I'm on this new program, this starting January 1st or the 2nd, because they need to recover, but January the 2nd, and they're excited. They're like, my gym is so crowded. I love the excitement, but I know they're not going to be here in a couple weeks. But for those 2 weeks, those people are so excited. They're going balls to the wall, and then that first dip happens.
Yeah, they get sore. They get injured.
Yeah, they get sore. They get injured, or actually life happens, because life's not going to slow down just because you want to get healthier. You still have different business responsibilities, different family responsibilities, and other social responsibilities. So that's the missing part that we often forget, is a lot of times we forget the integration part. We want to integrate these things so they feed into each other. Kind of like what you did. This is seamlessly fitting into your business life, that I'm not starting before 10 a.m. Something as simple as that. My day doesn't start until 10 a.m.
It's not like sleeping in either. I'm getting up earlier. Yeah. And I think you're spot on with that. It's like the Spartan 300 guarding their gym, because they're there and all the new people are coming in. You're like, God. But I find little fun things too. So you do doing challenges with people. So we just did a hard 75 together. And, but I'll leave you with this before it's just conscious of time. Sometimes people focus on the wrong metrics in business and in health. Forever in my Garmin app, the Connect app, it said target weight 200. I'm a smooth I weighed in at 225.4 today, but smooth 225. So I'm like a little over 100 kilos for the Europeans out there. Okay. Forever I'm trying to get to 200, because that's like, for whatever reason, I feel like that's the number, right? So do the hard 75, and everyone's like, what's your goal? And I actually changed my goal this time, because I realized that's been sitting in my phone for like forever, 5-7 years. I was like, why don't I just make it a different metric? And I said, I'm not even going to focus on weight loss. I'm going to focus on hitting 250 grams of protein a day, and just manage like no sugars. And I did that, and I lost 2 pounds. But my strength went from like, maybe a couple plates on the, the seated bench to doing 270, right? In a 75-day period. And I'm like, shit, I've gotten a lot stronger. But I've lost a ton of fat. I've gotten so much stronger. I don't know how you measure that, but I go, the metric is not weight. It was fat loss. It was strength gain. And now I have a machine that's burning more calories through the day. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go do another hard 75. If you guys don't know what that is, go look it up. But the point being is, I'm going to focus on muscle growth, because when I'm resting now, I'm burning more throughout the day. I'm going to go do an infrastructure build. And it's like, what a different way to think about it. And the truth is, I haven't changed weight, but I look better and feel better. I'm like, well, shit, I'm okay being this weight. I'll just gain some more muscle and lose a little more fat, and I'll look even better. Anyway, the point being is, the wrong metrics kill you, literally, like sometimes, because you're looking at it wrong. So do you see this as well, where I want to lose 50 pounds? You're like, how about we gain 2 pounds of muscle instead?
Yeah, this is a critical thing. I'm glad you brought it up. A lot of times we focus just on the weight and the weight loss. What you just did there is, I guarantee you, if you took like a you took like a DEXA scan or something, and or any body fat
I
test.
didn't do it before. I'm on the next
Okay.
one. I'm going to do it. I
Uh,
bet my muscle mass went up 10
yeah.
pounds. I did lose 10 pounds of fat, honestly.
Yeah. Your lean body mass improved. And that's a much more important metric predominantly for a lot of, unless you're just one of the people who's just getting off the couch, then sure, weight loss. But for those of us who are a little more active, lifting weights, cardio, all those types of things, lean body mass is what I put more emphasis on than just
Yeah.
pure what you weigh. It's
100%.
yeah.
And,
Um,
and the metaphor of that being focus on the right metrics, but sometimes you're coaxed into BMI is the metric. And I'm like, listen, I was I was a junior Olympic athlete for I was an athlete growing up, weird sport, but like highest level you can kind of get it in the junior level, like an 18, 20 years old, right? In a youth. And so I've always identified as an athlete as well, but you let it go. But the point being is, even at that level, with 6% body fat at the time, I was like 210,
mhm.
205 range. My BMI said I was
Yeah, you're gonna
obese.
be obese. Yeah, because
I'm
that's
obese, but I had an 8-pack. But I was like, I'm obese, guys.
yeah.
So BMI is related to weight, and then so that's why this 200 number was always out there. I'm like, oh, I probably. The point, people, being is when you're looking at metrics of, like, let's say ads or how much, look at the right metrics of, don't chase followers, don't chase views. Focus on the right metric when you're doing your
Mhm.
business. Do the right metric when you're doing your health, and you'll accomplish a goal that you set out to do. Because I think that's different. So, conscious time. We got a few minutes left. How do you want people to get a hold of you for just if they have questions, and who should get a hold of you as well?
Yeah, you can just go to executivehealth.io, or you can just find me on LinkedIn, and I'm responsive on both of those, and that's just a easy way to get in contact with me.
Hey, listen, I appreciate coming on today. I wish we had a little more time. Julian Hayes II, he has been disowned by his family, and he left school as the first person going to school. So if you think you had challenges, he didn't even dip his toe into what that was like, I'm sure. But reach out to him and learn a little bit about what he does. Corporate fitness as well. I think you do it at a bigger play. You do help individuals, I think, but it's what you can do for an organization as part of the
Mhm.
people, So if you're out there as what can I do to help my company get, because more fit, more healthy people produce, they like being there more. So this is the guy to go talk to on that.
Yeah, and there's tons of ideas in terms of the articles on that I write for Forbes and just the podcast. So there's tons of stuff that you can even get started with right now, that you
Awesome.
can institute on an individual and a group level.
Beautiful. All right. So get him a hold of him on LinkedIn at Julian Hayes II. That's the second, not number 2 for those who are out there. And executivehealth.io. Thank you, by the way, for coming on the show.
Thank you. I enjoyed this.
I appreciate it. I'll have you back here just a second once we say goodbye, but thank you again. Anybody who's listened to the show today, thank you. If this was your first time here, thanks for staying. If you've been here before, you rock. I really appreciate you for listening. Get out there, go unleash your entrepreneur, cut the tide of the stuff holding you back. You're making excuses. You're holding on to these fears for some reason. If you need help, then, reach out. I'll help you. Get me hold of me on LinkedIn, and I'll tell you some ways to kind of do that. It won't, I'll take a meeting with you. So have a listen to some of these other shows too that we have on at youtube.com at Never Been Promoted. But until we meet again, get out there and unleash your entrepreneur, and go get it done. Thanks for listening.